The content in this video is for general educational use. It does not represent political opinions or judgments about any country, culture, or government. Information is based on publicly available sources and may be summarized or simplified. Viewers should verify details through multiple sources.
Every story has to start somewhere. Some, they begin with a grand journey. Others with a brave hero. This story, though, this one begins with a mountain. Just a mountain, sitting right on the border of this quiet land, always covered in snow, and just watching. Watching everything. I mean, for as long as anyone can remember, for as long as stories have been told in Korea, this one mountain has always been there, Mount Paektu. The old legends say that right here, deep in one of its caves, the very first Korean was born, the mythical founder, Dangun. So you can imagine it's a sacred place, the beginning of a whole people. But, in the northern part of Korea, that old mountain was given a brand new story. It wasn't just ancient and sacred anymore. Suddenly, it was the holy place of the revolution. It was the secret base where the nation's founder, Kim Il-sung, was said to have fought this lonely, heroic war in the snow, all to free his country. And this is the story that children there learn first, before anything else. And so, from this sacred mountain, this revolutionary place, another story began to grow. This one wasn't about the birth of a whole nation. No, it was about the birth of a single child. A miracle child. So the official story goes like this. When the leader's son, Kim Jong Il, was born right there on Mount Paektu, all of nature celebrated. The sky, they say, lit up with a brand new star. A double rainbow stretched right over the peak. And the frozen winter, well, it just suddenly turned into spring. So he became known as the son of Mount Paektu. See, he wasn't just a child of man, he was a child of the mountain itself. And this story, it was so important because it tied him and his children and their children directly to this sacred land. It created what they called the Mount Paektu bloodline, a family that wasn't chosen by people, but by destiny, by fate itself. But there are always other stories, aren't there? The kind of stories you won't ever find in a textbook, the ones that are only told in whispers. When the lights are turned way down low and you're sure no one else is listening. These are the unofficial histories, the stories that kind of grow up in the cracks of the official narrative, almost like weeds in a perfectly manicured garden. These are the whispers in the snow. Because you see, the records that were kept outside of North Korea, well, they tell a very different tale. They say the miracle child wasn't born on a sacred mountain in 1942 at all. He was born a year earlier in a cold, stark military camp in the Soviet Union. There was no double rainbow, no new star. It was just an ordinary birth in a very ordinary place. And you know what happens when life gets really hard, right? When the official promises start to feel empty? People start searching for other kinds of stories, older kinds of magic. And people who managed to escape, they would later whisper about this, about how during the worst years of the famine, fortune tellers and shamans started to reappear. They had to do their work in absolute secret, of course, because looking for any kind of meaning outside the state, well, that was a very dangerous thing to do. And so, in this secret world, far away from the watchful eyes of the state, these new stories started to take shape. But these weren't stories about miracle births or bright, shining futures. Oh no. These were stories about the unquiet dead. It was becoming a land of ghosts. So stories started getting passed, very quietly, from one family to the next. Stories about ghosts, about the thin, hungry spirits of people who had starved during the famine, who were still out there roaming the countryside, just looking for food. Or the restless souls of those who were executed and just thrown into unmarked graves. And you have to understand, these weren't just tales to scare children. No, this was a way to remember the people you weren't allowed to mourn. Think about it. In a place where justice isn't for everyone, where people can just be erased from history like they never even existed, ghost stories become a form of quiet resistance. I mean, you can't stand up and criticize the government for the famine, right? But you can talk about the hungry spirits it left behind. It becomes a kind of code, a safe language to talk about unspeakable pain. And that's when it slowly starts to dawn on you. You realize that all of these stories, the bright, shining official myths and the dark, whispered ones, they aren't really separate worlds at all. They're two sides of the very same coin. And they're locked in this silent battle for what is real. That's the purpose of the story. There was a poet who fled North Korea, and he explained it perfectly. He said a myth can't be disproven with facts. It's just not possible. If your leader was born from a miracle, from a double rainbow and a new star, then questioning him isn't just political dissent. It's heresy. It's like you're trying to argue with the sky itself. And that right there is the whole point. And this official story, it's built so carefully, brick by brick, right from the very beginning of a person's life. It starts before a child can even read. They're taught to give thanks for their food, not to their parents, but to the fatherly leader. Then there's education. It's not really about learning how to think, it's about learning what to think. They even call it a human reshaping project, all designed to build this absolute, unwavering loyalty. And finally, the story is just everywhere. It's in their math problems, it's in their music, it's in children's songs. Until it's not just a story anymore. It's the only reality you've ever known. And that's why the state comes down so hard on things like fortune tellers and shamans. It's not because they think it's all backwards or silly superstition. It's because they know those things are powerful. A former security officer even admitted it. He said they had to monitor things like that because they could redirect loyalty. See, any story that offers meaning, any kind of power that doesn't come directly from the state, even something as simple as a ghost story, it's seen as a rival, a threat. So in the end, we're left with that mountain, the one that just sits there, watching. And it holds two kinds of stories in its snowy peaks, doesn't it? There's the divine legend of a family supposedly chosen by heaven. And then there are the haunted whispers of a people just trying to make sense of all their sorrow. One is a story of power, and the other is a story of pain.